Hi, good evening, and welcome to Senior Parent Night as the counselors and I take you through some different steps of what this season is going to look like. To start off, we're going to start off with a kind of like a little picture of how our kids have changed over the years. First, our kids maybe when they were leaving for kindergarten had a hard time doing it, and then here we are on the first day of college saying, please don't go. So we know that this is a big transition, and we are here to walk you and your students through this process. This year we had a little bit of a shuffle in terms of counselor allocation. Joined us in the alphabet, and so he now has the BU through the ECs. And you'll find our contact information there, the alphabet breakdown with our phone numbers and email addresses, should you need to reach out to us. Getting us started this evening is Ms. Burnham with the student role in the application process.
Thank you, Robin. Welcome to the college application process. As we mentioned earlier in your invitation, we're going to be talking about the student role, the counselor role, and the parent role, as well as a few other items that you'll want to be aware of as your senior starts to apply to college. So again, it's important for seniors to decide and create their final list of colleges. And granted, some kids are still in that exploration phase and just kind of figuring out what it is they'll be looking for. Typically, students apply to between 6 and 8 schools. Sometimes there are a few more. Sometimes students apply to just a couple. It really just depends on where your student is at and where you are at in the process. It is really important, as we will stress to you and to your student, that kids have a good range of schools. So they have some highly likely schools, they have some target schools, and then of course they have their reach schools. As students are also setting up their online accounts for applications, we encourage them to write all of that information down somewhere and have it in a safe place and keep it posted somewhere so they have easy access to it. We also recommend that they share that information with you so that you have it in a safe place too. Sometimes when kids create different accounts and stuff, things get messed up. So we really encourage you to write it down and have a written copy of it just in case. And again, completing applications, it is really important that kids do that in a timely fashion. Don't wait until the last minute. It is a step-by-step process, and the sooner they get started and just start working, the better it is for everyone. The counselor responsibilities in the application process, we are happy to recommend schools based off of your seniors' criteria and kind of what they are looking for in a college. We are doing virtual meetings with kids via Google Meet. We also are doing some in-person meetings with kids. We practice social distancing in our office. We wear masks every time we are around people. So, it's a safe place for kids to come in and meet. We can help finalize a college list. We can give them pros and cons to different schools. If they're looking to eliminate a couple or add a couple, we can surely help them and give them options. It's important to understand, we understand the application requirements and deadlines. Everything is sent out in a timely manner. We will communicate to your student if something is missing from the information that we need to process anything on our end. So we will definitely communicate that to your senior. Internal document that we use for processing the school reports, in which we submit recommendations, submit transcripts. So it is something that, for those of you who have had a senior go through this process, this is in lieu of the pink sheet that we aren't able to use because we are not able to have kids come in and out of our office. So we do have an internal document, and when kids are when kids are requesting transcripts on Naviance, that generates everything else, and then it just starts the process moving. And then with the financial piece also, Brian Lindeman will speak in his presentation about the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Please know that you can always call a financial aid administrator. I mean, we are very lucky in this area that we have a number of public and private schools that you can call. It does not matter if your student is applying there or not, but they are happy to help parents and walk through that process. So the parent responsibility. So in this, you are there to provide support, encourage your senior, encourage them to work ahead, provide guidance, help them set up some guidelines, help them set deadlines so they keep on track, provide assistance. I think having the conversation with them about the financial piece is really important so your kids know exactly what to expect. It's great to have a final list of good admissions options and good financial options, just so kids are prepared and feel good about where they've applied, and finally in the spring, how things are going. And then balance is the key. It's important to keep everything simple and work with your kids to just keep moving forward, as we are all doing at this time in 2020. So creating a SMART list of post-secondary options, I had mentioned highly likely schools, target schools, having that the conversation with your student about financial options, proximity. We always encourage kids to maybe have a school or two on their list that is drivable, just so in case something happens and they want to be closer to home, they have those options. Within that, and within all of these options, there are two early options, and the difference, one is early decision and one is early action. Early decision is a binding agreement. So if a student would apply, if they chose to apply to a school with an early decision deadline, they would only apply to one school with an early decision deadline. And if they apply with the commitment to that school, that if they are admitted, that they will attend that school. There is an agreement that students need to sign, parents need to sign, the counselor needs to sign. So it is very much a agreement all around for everyone. The early action option is a non-binding agreement. So students will still, they will still apply early, they will find out early, but it's not a binding agreement, so kids will understand, kids will be able to weigh out all their options. You can look at different financial aid packages, etc. So early action, both of these early options, students typically apply by November 1st, November 15th. They'll usually find out mid-December, and then depending on if you're early decision, early action, you can continue moving or your decision has been made for you. So the other admissions options that are there, there's a regular decision, rolling admissions, and open admissions. So regular decision is basically the student will apply by a specific date and will more than likely get their decision in the spring. That typically happens around April 1st. With rolling admissions, students are able to, those applications are reviewed once they are received in the admissions office. And then students will usually receive a decision between 2 to 8 weeks after they have submitted all of their application pieces. So if a student applied to a school with a rolling decision deadline, they might have all of their materials in by November 1st, and they might find out by November 15th that they have been accepted. And then open admissions means that students who have high school diploma, you have your GED, that you are accepted for admission at those schools. The different ways to apply. Typically, there is an institutional online application. So like for instance, the University of Minnesota will have their online application. They also have there is also the common application. So most schools will have both, but there are a number of schools that do subscribe to the common application. So the students will create their Common App account. They will apply to a number of schools, just filling out one application, which is super nice and easy. The University of Minnesota is on the Common App, so that makes it easy for them and easy for your students to add those schools to the list. And really, it's all online, so it's good if your student hasn't yet looked up the Common App or downloaded that, etc. That's something that you can start that process and get that moving. Essays. Now, not every college will say. There are many that will require an essay, a personal statement. Some will require 2, some will require 1. Some will ask for just a short, thing that we've missed in your application. Do you have anything else you want to say? And if you do have something to say, that is important, in that space, to definitely say that. All the Common App essays are up and online. You can go to the Common App website and look it up and start with those prompts. It's also important for kids to remember that there are some schools that will also have supplemental essays, so they should really look at their common application and look at their schools that they're considering, and then really look at if there is an extra essay. Lots of times those essays will be, why do you want to go to school X? And some of them are super creative and ask different questions, and those are kind of fun to do as well. It's important with essays, you can utilize your English teacher, you can definitely have your counselor read it. If your student is struggling, or if they have some questions about that, they can definitely utilize the writer's block, and that's our peer tutoring center. And they can get started. They can have their essay reviewed by a peer coach. There are lots of different options here at school, so you can, definitely feel like your kids can they can write their essay, have other people read it, tweak it a little bit, and then be ready to submit. I mentioned also about the common application. There is a parent guardian signature, which is only for early decision students. Again, that is that part of that binding agreement. The common application also requires an official transcript, and that is requested by the student on Naviance, and Taylor Johnson will explain those pieces of Naviance shortly. There's a letter of recommendation. Sometimes it's a teacher, sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2. So that's another piece of the common application. And then There is a secondary school report form, and sometimes along with that, there is also a counselor recommendation. So, test scores. Students are responsible for sending their scores through the ACT. So you'd go to act.org or College Board, your SAT scores through collegeboard.com. Now, again, as we have stressed a number of times, there are a number of schools that have gone test optional this year due to COVID. And there are schools that add themselves to the list every day. It is important to remember that schools are not looking to penalize kids for not having a test score, because obviously there are circumstances that are way out of their control with regard to this. And again, this is something that's happening to kids across the world. So colleges are definitely aware. They are willing to work with kids, families, etc. They are not looking to penalize kids for not having a test score. So just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of that. And the last piece I was going to say, if a student does have a test score to send, don't wait a minute to send it. Be sure that you make that a part of your checklist and get that submitted. For students who need application fee waivers, those are also available in our office. Students who are on free and reduced lunch are eligible to receive those fee waivers. If the application fees prove to be a hardship for your family, please feel free to reach out to us, to your student's counselor, have your student come in and talk to their counselor about it. We are happy to do what we can to help you through this. The forms are available from the counseling office and from your student's counselor, and we can surely talk to your kids about that. Now, I mentioned earlier the counselor recommendation. So sometimes a college or university asks for a counselor recommendation. So people will ask, well, how do you write the counselor recommendation? A few things that we like to take advantage of. There is a questionnaire that we ask for students to please fill out. It is a packet that is available on our website, and students can, type in it and send it to us electronically, write in it and bring it into our office, leave it in the main office. We can grab it there. It's totally fine. But that packet really gives us information about the student. And we've worked with your kids for 4 years, and that's been the really exciting part of, about having kids at the high school and having ninth graders come to the high school. So we've been able to really, get to know them, work with them, etc. And the thing we don't know, though, we don't know everything that your kids do outside of school. We don't necessarily know their favorite classes. We don't know how they feel that they've changed over the course of 4 years, all of that. So it is, that questionnaire really gives us some good information to just kind of supplement what we already know about your kids. There is an optional parent questionnaire that is also available on our website, and you can certainly fill that out as senior parents, because obviously you guys know your kids the best. So you can fill that out and submit that. Feel free to email that to us. It's absolutely fine. Once we have written your student's recommendation, that will be uploaded to Naviance, and it will be sent to all the schools that your student is applying to. Now, if your student happens to have a recommendation from someone outside of EHS, like a boss or an advisor, someone they volunteered with, etc., who's asking them, I'd love to write a college recommendation for you. There is a way to do that also. We tell kids to please address envelopes directly to the schools, and then put stamps on them, and then we can, those individuals can fold them up and just mail them directly to those colleges and universities. So they will definitely read them, and it's an important piece to kind of create the picture of who your student is. And then teacher recommendations. So there are many colleges will also ask for a teacher recommendation. The questions that we get the most are how many teacher recommendations should I have? Who should I ask, etc. We all for you to ask a teacher that knows your student the best. Whether as a learner in their class, someone that they've really connected with. There lots of times they're junior year teachers. Sometimes it's a sophomore year teacher that they've continued a relationship with. So it's been, it's typically from core courses. So your English, math, social studies, science, and world language areas. So those are typically the teachers that will write recommendations. If a student really knows, if they are really involved in band, choir, orchestra, they're strong visual art students. Also, the fine arts teachers will also write recommendations, and they're great and they're happy to do that. So that sums up my part of the presentation. Now we're going to head over to Mr. Johnson and Naviance.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everyone. For those parents who have been through this process before, like Ms. Burnham said, our transcript request process is different. There's no more pink sheet. So if you heard about that from an older son or daughter, that's not the case anymore. And this is just a screenshot of what it's going to look like for students on Naviance when they're requesting these transcripts. Now, we have a few that are on our website. If your student doesn't quite remember, oh, how do I do this? Or if you're just curious yourself, they're short 3 to 5 minute videos that kind of get to the point and walk a student through step by step. We also offer walk-ins, and they can always schedule a meeting with us too if they have those college questions. All right. Talking about the transcript requests, we really need to talk about deadlines. So we're lucky enough to work with a little over 650 seniors this year. And with that, each senior applying to 6 to 8 schools comes a lot of processing work, paperwork-wise. So if the entire senior class requested transcripts at once, we're talking about thousands of transcripts. And we want to guarantee that these get done. So we're asking every senior to submit their transfer requests or letters of rec requests by these deadlines. So if a student has a November 1st deadline, we're asking them to have everything submitted on Naviance and the letters given request to teachers or to us by October 11th at the latest. If they want to do that this week, we love it. That's great. And then just look at the timeline and be aware that too, breaks come into play too. So if you have a January 1 deadline, we're looking at it as that date that we need that by to guarantee all the materials are submitted to those colleges. Related to those deadlines, we just wanted to talk about a general overview for you. What does the fall, the winter, and the spring look like in a typical senior year? Well, the fall really looks like continuing to do those visits. Virtual visits are such a big thing right now. And I'm going to talk about our rep visits in a little bit. But as much as you can, use these online resources that universities and admissions reps are providing you. They want you to get to know the campus. They want you to get to know the culture of the schools. And the fall really comes into finalizing that college list. On October 1st, the FAFSA becomes available. And as Lisa mentioned earlier, Brian Lindeman from Macalester will be talking a little bit more about that in detail. Now's the time to meet with your counselor or teachers, getting that extra help on maybe essays, finalizing your list, these questions, requesting letters of rec, and then studying and staying on top of school. Your grades and your schoolwork are always going to be one of those top things that you need to keep on. And when we talk about that parent role, helping students kind of frame that imbalance is really important. I would say most of our students kind of finalize their list by or before winter break. And going on to winter, if a student does apply early decision, they start to hear back in December. You'll be submitting those financial aid forms if they're needed. And then in February, if a school needs official first semester grades, also known as like your mid-year grades, we will be talking to seniors about that process. That typically happens a couple weeks after finals and first semester. We have a lot of work we do behind the scenes to update transcripts, get final grades. So we'll be talking to all seniors about that in February. And then the spring is kind of the fun part and also the hard part. You know, you're waiting for those admissions decisions. You're keeping all those options open. You're comparing financial aid packages. Maybe you're trying to talk to admissions rep one more time. Maybe you're going to try to go walk campus one time. And then, you know, historically, we had that May 1st kind of decision date and that kind of celebration for seniors on their post-secondary plans. And then finally, come the end of the year, it's that final transcript request. Colleges want those final grades and to see your graduation, your culmination. So college rep, we're really lucky that each year we have hundreds of reps in schools that want to meet with our seniors. And this year is different in the sense where we don't have reps coming into the building, but we do have those reps coming in for virtual meets and trying to meet with our students. And it's invaluable to have that opportunity to talk to somebody, especially somebody who's going to be at that admissions table, potentially talking about your application. So we really encourage students to take advantage of this. On their Naviance page and their colleges tab, it lists the dates and times for those virtual visits and how they can sign up through that. Students do need to prioritize classroom time. So if you're in class, you need to be in class. Just email the rep if you can't make the visit. They understand. And they'll also provide you more opportunities if you want to be able to connect with them. This just kind of gives you a quick example of what we're looking at this week and next week. We have 60 plus schools that are coming just in the next 8 or 9 days alone. So have your student maybe pull up Naviance, you can look at the list together, especially if it's a school that they're interested in or curious about. This is a perfect way to get the most up-to-date information and make a personal connection. So one of the most common topics that we discuss at a senior meeting or even junior meeting or sophomore meeting is what matters most to colleges. And we're lucky enough that a little later we're going to hear from Heidi Meyer from the University of Minnesota. But we want to give you a quick overview before she talks. The top admissions factors considered by colleges, and you know, the last 5-10 years, this holds true. They look at strength of high school curriculum. If you take a college prep class, your grades in those, your overall GPA, and then test scores. There are other important factors we talk about, extracurricular commitments, your essay, you know, putting that narrative to your story, letters of recommendation, and demonstrated interest. You know, when we talk about test optional, test blind schools, we're just talking about removing that from the admission standpoint, and there might be an increased focus in those other academic factors. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that later. It's always fun to see, you know, where have our previous students gone in the past. You know, if I have a student who isn't really sure, what I do is talk about other stories, other destinations that might resonate with them. And we have our top 10 applied to and top 10 attended schools right here. This holds true. Our top 2 most applied to schools are typically the U of M Twin Cities and UW-Madison, Wisconsin. The fun thing is looking at the top 10 attended schools. And we see the U of M and actually Normandale Community College are the top 2 attended programs. Now, I think it's important to just kind of clear the message of this is about fit. This is about fit for what you're ready for next year, what's going to launch you into success, what's financially appropriate for a student. There are plenty of students that get accepted at 4-year schools and decide to go a 2-year route for their own reasons, because that is the best fit and direction for them. And they go on to graduate from great 4-year colleges. It's fun to see different schools that pop up in the top 10 attended list as well. And just for you to know, last year, we had students attend 180 different colleges and universities. 180. You know, this really is about best fit. And I wouldn't be surprised if your student maybe applies to one of them on the list, but be open to what they have. Last year, we had about 83% of our class attend 4-year colleges and universities. It's kind of fun to look at the breakdown. We had a bit more than half that attended public schools, 63%. And we had about 40% that went to Minnesota State. We do see a lot of students stick to Wisconsin, Iowa, and the Dakotas. And that's part of that out of state. When we talk to students, we talk a lot about proximity school having options. So even if they don't apply to a school in Minnesota, we often see them apply to like Wisconsin, Iowa, or the Dakotas. We had just under 10% of students take advantage of the community college options, 3% in tech schools, and then 5% kind of maybe taking a gap year, taking other plans. And again, our graduates went to 180 different colleges and universities, which we're really excited about. Senioritis is real, and this is where we need everybody's help. You know, students have been in school their entire lives, and they're just itching for this next step, their independence, kind of going to college. And grades matter. Grades really matter. So senior year courses, they do play into college admissions. There are plenty of schools that defer decisions until after they get those mid-year reports that we talked about earlier, those final first semester grades. All offers for admissions, they're conditional upon successful completion of your coursework. When we send transcripts, they show colleges the classes you're in. You have to notify a school if you change your senior year courses, because they're admitting you based upon the courses you registered for here, and we're showing them on your transcript. It's not a topic we love talking about, but offers have been revoked in the past because of significant difference in performance or significant changes in what a student's taking from what they reported they would take. Our Naviance curriculum over the last 4 years has all been really purposeful and intentional. We've wanted to help students first explore who they are through their interests, career interests, personality assessments. We've wanted to connect that with future planning, with how to search for colleges, with how to create a smart college list. And every lesson we've done with them is on their Naviance account, under the My Planner and under their tasks assigned to them. So if a student isn't sure or doesn't know where to start, I always refer them back to the advisory curriculum we've done with them. Those videos are still there. The resources are still there for them. We want them to use Naviance to help explore this. And we have great resources for them. And we hope that they've been able to keep up with us along the way for that. So I'm going to be handing it over to Lisa. I believe she's going to introduce our next speaker.
Thanks, Taylor. So our first presentation, our first virtual presentation is from Heidi Meyer, who is the Executive Director of the Office of Admissions at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. Heidi is a graduate from the University of Minnesota from the College of Liberal Arts. She majored in political science. She has worked in college admissions for 23 years and has been the Executive Director for the Office of Admissions at the U for the past 3 years. We are delighted that she was able to help us out and provide this opportunity for you guys to hear from her. So, Heidi Meyer.
Hi, everybody. It's great to virtually be with you at the Edina Parent Night. I wish I were with you in person, but I'm excited to share with you information about admissions and large flagship universities. My name is Heidi Meyer. I'm Executive Director of Admissions at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. And I'm going to share my screen with you. I have a bit of a presentation that will talk more about admission and those large flagship universities. And everything that I have to share is really shared within context of the University of Minnesota, because that's what I know. But I think that most of the fairly translatable to any large flagship university. So one of the reasons that you might think about looking at a public institution is that public institutions really have a mission to serve the residents of their state, to develop those future leaders, to establish a well-educated and skilled workforce. And there are some really great positives about large public universities, because we consider that size as a big opportunity, an opportunity for breadth and depth of programs, for state-of-the-art facilities, one-of-a-kind research facilities, one-of-a-kind researchers, the faculty who will be teaching your students, career preparation through those research opportunities, through internships, through very large alumni networks, and also value. So thinking about value in terms of cost is typically going to be lower at a large public university, and also through name recognition and name recognition outside of the state that we are located in. Admission will range at a large public institution from moderately selective to highly selective. And I know that sometimes people think that public mainly at a formulaic admissions process, but in fact, the majority of schools do holistic review. So in terms of selectivity, probably about 40 to 70% admit rates for those institutions. And the decision notification types tend to be in the early action to regular decision deadlines, sometimes even rolling notifications. So that might mean that early action, for example, is a date by which, for the University of Minnesota, a date of November 1, application means that you'll hear by the end of January what your decision is, whereas our regular decision means January 1, and a student will hear by the end of March. Now, we actually provide rolling decisions within those timelines, so a student could hear with any time within that time frame, whereas some institutions do a singular notification date. So everybody hears on December 21st, for example, or everybody hears on such and such a date. So those are the main differences between the notification types. And when applying to a large public institution, a number of them will have a few different options for applications. So for us, we consider the Golden Gopher application, which is our institutional application, and we're also on the Common application. The Common application is a membership organization, and that means that a student will fill out one demographic piece of the application, and then there will be institution-specific information for all of the other applications. So there's no preference as to which particular application a student should choose. They should just choose one of them and stick with it, whichever one is the best opportunity and option for the student. The questions are very similar across all application platforms, so you're not going to miss anything by submitting one but not the other. For the Twin Cities campus, we have one application for freshman admission, the review for honors programs, and also for academic scholarships. And a complete application includes the application itself and self-reported academic record or the Common App courses in whichever application platform is being used, as well as a $55 application fee. Like so many other institutions across the country, we are not requiring ACT or SAT scores at this time, due in large part to access and availability of those exams. So those are not required for students, although a student does need to let us know at the point of application whether or not they will be submitting a test score and whether or not that test score will be used in the process of review. As I mentioned before, our early action deadline is November 1. Students will hear a decision by the end of January. Our regular deadline is January 1st, and students will hear a decision by the end of March. We did just add a new deadline of December 1st, just to provide some flexibility for students, especially those students taking that October ACT or SAT. Students who apply by December 1st will hear a decision by February 15th. In terms of holistic review, what that means is that every facet of a student's application is going to be considered. There are often academic factors and then the context factors, but they may just be the information that says who a student is. So coursework through high school graduation, grades in academic coursework, class rank, grade point average, academic interest, ACT or SAT scores if provided. Those are all the academic pieces of the puzzle. And then the context factors give us a really good understanding of who a student is as a person. So I know that a lot of students are concerned about whether or not they should be submitting an ACT or an SAT. And if you've already taken that exam, and if the student feels that that ACT or SAT is a really good reflection of their ability to succeed in their academics in high school, submit the ACT or SAT. If you haven't taken the ACT or SAT or are not going to be able to take it, don't worry about it. These are things that we'll all take into consideration in the application review process. Now, I know too that many students are wondering, how do I set myself apart if I don't have an ACT or an SAT score? This is a student's opportunity to shine. This is a student's opportunity to share much more information, much more detailed information about who they are as a student, what they do in high school, what they did in high school, maybe in terms of having musicals getting canceled or spring seasons, sports seasons getting canceled. What did a student do in place of that? In our application, while we don't require an essay, there are many short answer questions that a student can provide that detailed level of information. And other institutions will require an essay. So that's the place where a student can really provide quite a bit more information about who they are as a person and as a student, and who they will be as a student on one of our campuses. Just to provide some information about who we admitted this year, how we enrolled students this year. When a student applies to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, they apply to one of 8 freshman admitting colleges. And each college has their own flavor. Each college has their own coursework that they're looking for. And therefore, each college looks a little bit different in terms of students admitted. So this provides a good overall picture of the type of student typically admitted to one of our freshman admitting colleges. Now, I will say that this will look different for the fall 21 class because we're not requiring the ACT or the SAT. So know that the name is really flexibility, and we will be helping students if they have questions, wondering whether or not they're academically in a good fit for a particular program. They should always feel free to contact us. And just some closing thoughts. These are the things that I talked about why a public university. But I will say one other tip is, well, 2 tips. One tip is that this year, please make sure that your students aren't waiting until the final deadline date to apply for admission. It's really important that they give the application some time and some experience and some thought. So getting started on the application on the deadline day is typically not helpful. And also, accidents happen. And while institutions are being really flexible and working with students through any concerns that they might have, that puts a lot of undue stress on a student. So please, a week before the application deadline, consider starting the application. I would also say that even though college search looks different this year in that you might not be able to visit the schools and institutions you're considering, there are a lot of really, really great opportunities to do virtual visits. And it's not the same, but it gives a really great taste of the institution. And I think colleges and universities across the United States have done a really good job of focusing online efforts towards a virtual visit. So I would encourage students to really consider any type of institution. Think about the fact that you don't have to travel anywhere, but you can visit all sorts of campuses and places you never would have experienced before. So that's just my closing thought. And I want to thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here with you virtually. And I look forward to seeing you all in person at some point. Thanks. Bye-bye.
We appreciate Heidi being here virtually and providing this presentation for us. Next up, we have Brian Lindeman, who is the Assistant Vice President for Admissions and Financial Aid at Macalester College. Brian is a graduate of Macalester College. He graduated in 1989. His undergraduate degree was in math. He has worked in 3 previous institutions of higher education. He worked in admissions before he came back to Macalester to assume roles in admissions and then financial aid. He has spent the last 20 years at Macalester in financial aid and admissions, and he is the parent of a senior student this year. So next up, we have Brian Lindeman.
Hello, my name is Brian Lindeman. I'm Assistant VP for Admissions and Financial Aid at Macalester College. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm here to give you about 10 minutes worth of information on financial aid designed for seniors and their families as they begin that senior year. So let's start by talking about perspective. Today we're going to be really looking at financial aid programs at the forest level. So at this level, colleges and universities have financial aid programs that look pretty much the same. And that's important knowledge to have. We'll try to give you some idea of what this forest looks like, but ultimately, as you progress, you're going to need to get to know a few of the trees in the forest, meaning programs at the individual colleges and universities that you become most interested in. But today we'll stay at the forest level. So when should you apply for financial aid? Generally, apply for financial aid about the same time you're applying for admission. So if you are looking at an early decision or an early action program early in the fall of your senior year, then you should be applying for financial aid around the same time. But each college or university will have its own instructions where you need to really drill in to know the deadlines. Keep in mind that you do not need to have a final college list in order to start the financial aid application process. The most common financial aid application form, the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA, becomes available October 1 at fafsa.ed.gov. And this is a good place to start. You can start it on October 1st, even if you don't have any idea which colleges or universities that you'll ultimately be interested in. When you do fill out the FAFSA, you'll need to list at least one school in the school release section. You can always just pick one and enter it. You can come back later. You can erase the first one and put in different colleges. Click the submit button and actually finish the FAFSA. None of the schools will ever see any of this information, so it's okay to just pick one to get started. You can list up to 10 colleges in the school release section, and every time you submit your FAFSA, the schools that are currently listed in the school release section will get a result. So if you're making corrections, you can come back to the FAFSA as often as necessary to make corrections or to change the schools that are in the school release section. But if you're making corrections, make sure that the schools that are in the school release section at the time are the ones you're most interested in, because those are the only schools that will receive the correction. Other ingredients that you might encounter, depending on the schools you're thinking about, would include the CSS profile. You can see the website there where you can go in and check to see which colleges require the profile. It's the vast minority, and just to give you an idea, in the state of Minnesota, there are only 3 colleges that require the profile. And so if the college requires the profile, they'll be explicit about that in their own direction. Some colleges may ask for tax documents in order to verify the information that goes onto the FAFSA or the profile or both. And each school ultimately has their own recipe for exactly what they'll need. But these are the common ingredients that you'll probably run into. In order to complete the FAFSA, you'll be entering information about your income from the past. This is both parent and student income. So for example, in the 21-22 school year, the FAFSA is going to ask about 2019 income. When you fill out the FAFSA, if you are a person, parent or student who filed a tax return, you'll be presented with an option to try to bring your information directly from the IRS database into the FAFSA. This is called the IRS Data Retrieval Tool. If you can, and if you're comfortable with it, I suggest you do it. It's a good way to avoid a scavenger hunt trying to find your tax documents, and it has the advantage that information that's ported directly from the IRS to the FAFSA is considered to be verified information because it came directly from the IRS and you didn't have to enter anything manually. But it doesn't work for everyone. There are several layers of security built into this process, and if you enter your address slightly differently than you did on your tax return, then it probably won't work. If you encounter that, you try to use the IRS data retrieval tool and it isn't working for some reason, that's not a problem. Don't worry about it. You can enter your information manually as necessary. To sign the FAFSA, both the parent and the student need something called a Federal Student Aid ID. You can obtain it in advance at fsaid.ed.gov. The FSA ID is durable, so it can be used both now and in future years to sign the FAFSA. For parents, if you have more than one child who's completing a FAFSA, you can use the same FSA ID to sign each child's FAFSA. And just in terms of gathering documents to help you complete the FAFSA, if you're not going to use the IRS data retrieval tool, or if it doesn't work, you're going to need your tax return. You'll need W-2 forms from the relevant year, and then you'll probably need bank statements or other asset statements to be able to enter current values for assets, including cash, savings, checking, non-assets like stocks or bonds, and real estate that's not your primary residence. The results of your financial aid application are going to come from the colleges and universities. When you submit the FAFSA, you'll get an acknowledgement from the FAFSA processor, but it won't say much about the financial aid that's available to the student. Colleges and universities calculate eligibility for federal aid, for state aid, and for institutional aid, and then present it usually around the time of admission in the form of a financial aid package. But again, forest, tree, your results will vary a little bit about the timing. The package of financial aid might include as many as 4 different categories of financial aid. Student loans and student employment are what we group into something called self-help. They're ways for a student to help themselves to pay their education expenses. And then on the right, you see gift aid, which is the best kind of financial aid that doesn't need to be earned or repaid. And that generally breaks down into merit-based scholarships, which are awarded to a student based on some kind of academic or talent-based criteria, and need-based grants, which are awarded to students based on their family's financial situation. That previous slide had a nice, neat pie with 4 slides. The reality is that when you receive results from 5 different schools, they're likely to be different sizes and very different mixes. So each college or university is going to construct that financial aid package according to their own institutional policy. If you have something going on that affects your ability to pay education expenses, or if your income has changed since the year that's asked about on the FAFSA, you can express that to the individual colleges and universities. The good news is that colleges and universities have the ability to take special circumstances into account. The bad news or the challenge is that you need to present those circumstances to each and every college or university that you would like to consider those circumstances. And it's likely that you'll get a different response from individual colleges. But the procedure I'd suggest is 2-step. 1, summarize your circumstances as you're applying for financial aid, and then deliver that summary to the colleges and universities at the time you're applying for aid. That could be in the form of an email, a letter. Try to keep it relatively short, but as detailed as you can. If you have documentation of your new perhaps a pay stub that shows a change in income, it's a good idea to provide that. Then there's a second step that I think is also important. If you receive a financial aid result from a college or university that doesn't seem to reflect your special circumstances, it's a good idea for you to follow up and ask a few questions. Did you receive my summary of special circumstances? Did you take it into account? Did it affect the result? And is there any more information I can give you to help you take those circumstances into account? That dialogue often is really helpful to help both the college or university understand what's happening and to get exactly what they need in order to take those circumstances into account. Now, in the meantime, as you're thinking about applying and you're waiting for results, there's a couple things I would suggest you do to prepare yourself and prepare your family for the results that you'll ultimately see. First of all, every college and university has something called a net price calculator on their website. This is a way for you to enter specific information about your student and family and receive an instant estimate of what you might expect at that individual college or university. Customized way to get a preview of what you can expect in the financial aid process. This is my number one recommendation. If you have not done a net price calculator, pick a college and go do it. This can be really illuminating. It can be very encouraging, and it can be the opposite. But either way, if you can get a preview and have some time to process that information, it will be helpful to you. If you happen to be interested in one of the 70 or so colleges that use My Intuition, this is a really great and easy way to get started. It takes about 5 minutes. You answer 6 questions anonymously, and you can get an instant estimate of aid eligibility at one of these 70 institutions. You don't have to provide any personal information. You can do it more than once, and it's a great way to get started. The other thing that I really would strongly suggest is that you start having conversations about value, about family finances, and about financial feasibility now. This is not something most parents are comfortable with. I certainly am not comfortable with this as a parent. But if you do it, and if you can force yourself to have honest dialogue about how you'll make decisions when it comes time in the spring to make those decisions, I think you'll be happy that you did. This is often the first time a student is put into the position of being partly responsible for a major financial decision. And it may take some time for them to understand the trade-offs, the concepts of value, and what it means for your family. So if you can give yourselves a few weeks, a few months to process these kinds of conversations, I think you'll be happy that you did that rather than trying to rush those conversations all into a very short period in the spring. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks. I hope this is helpful. Thank you, and best wishes for success in this process.
Oh, that concludes our senior parent night this evening. We are opening the floor to questions. We received questions, and as those have been coming up, we've been responding in the chat. There's one question that we thought maybe we needed to discuss instead of just putting in the chat. And the question from Ellen, talking about COVID-related issues such as large number of students doing deferrals that might affect admissions in 2021. And Ms. Burnham is going to answer that question.
Hi, thanks, Robin. Hi, parents. We have communication with a number of selective colleges and universities regarding this topic, and all of their answers have basically been they have not noticed a distinct number of students who are deferring, and it's not going to be it's not going to play a role in students, the class of 2021, with their application cycles. So while we have all heard about students who are deferring, who have decided, the class of 2020, who have decided to defer their post-secondary plans for this school year. I think it's just a lot of it is that we're hearing about it just because of the COVID piece, but colleges and universities are saying they're not seeing a significant impact on that, so that will not be affecting applications or admissions decisions.
Thank you. Are there any other questions out there that you would like answered before we sign off for the evening? Otherwise, the questions have been answered as they were presented. While we're waiting, maybe just a couple more minutes to see if anyone has any questions. I just want to point you guys back to the senior, our website page, the class of 2021, for any questions on how-tos. We literally have a document that says how-to with hyperlinks embedded in it to take you to a 3-minute video on how to request transcripts, 3-minute video on how to request teacher letter of recs in Naviance. We are here to partner with you and your student through this time. It's exciting. It's a little bit, students are nervous, parents are nervous. And then you add COVID on top of it, it adds just another layer of complexity. And so we're here to walk you through it. So I would say that if you have any questions after tonight, head there to Class of 2021, the little folder. And if your question can't be answered there, then please feel free to reach out to us regardless. And we're here to help you. So, so one of the questions was, has COVID kept more students to apply closer to home versus out of state? It's hard to answer that one because when our students applied last fall, our deadlines started in October through the whole rest of the year. And so our students would have already kind of fulfilled 90% of their applications of where they wanted to apply to by March when everything kind of shut down and we went home. So we didn't see, looking at the data where it said 63% of our students applied in-state and went in-state. I think it was 63 chose, right, Mr. Johnson? 63% chose to stay in Minnesota?
Yeah, that sounds right. I'm going to quick double check the numbers since we talk about so many numbers.
I know, sorry.
60% went public and 60% actually went out of state. So it kind of almost different from what we maybe expected. But to Robin's point, students have made so many decisions before all this happened.
Mm-hmm.
That's really formed that. And I think at the end of the day, every family's making that decision what they're most comfortable with and what feels right.
And with regard to the class of 2021, since kids are just starting to apply right now, we don't really have a feel yet if COVID is affecting where they're going to apply. Many students that I've talked with, it's not seeming to have an impact on where they're thinking of potentially applying at this point.
Another question that came up here at the end. What are the 3 colleges in Minnesota that require the CSS profile? That's Carleton College, Gustavus Adolphus College, Macalester, and St. Olaf. So there's 4 actually in total. And then, Nikki, I will reach out to you regarding your question regarding Lily. And I think that's it from all of the ones that are streaming in. So we really appreciate you spending this time with us in the last hour to really go over and what the kind of steps are, if you will, to this whole process. So again, we're here to walk you through. We wish you good health and a great evening, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.